On July 7, 2016, just before 9 p.m., 25 years old, Micah Xavier Johnson, an Army Reserve Afghan war veteran, arrived at downtown Dallas, parking his SUV on Lamar Street, where a protest is being held for the killing of two black men, Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, at the hand of the police. He left the vehicle, hazard lights blinking, wearing a camo bulletproof vest, and carrying a Ismas Saiga rifle. He approached the body of officers with a single objective in mind: kill as many white police officers as possible. Micah Xavier Johnson was born in Magee, Mississippi, July 2, 1991, and raised in Mesquite, Texas. When he was 4, his parents divorced. One of his former classmates in John Horn High School said he was a fun-loving kind of guy. And when he was 17, he participated in the Junior Reserve Officer Training Program, graduating in 2009. Immediately after, Johnson enlisted in the U.S. Army Reserve, completing basic training, and served from 2009 to 2015 as a carpentry and masonry specialist. During his time in the Army, he was described as openly religious and often socializing with white soldiers. Johnson was assigned to an engineering brigade in Seagull, Texas in September 13 and was activated that same month to support the Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan and served up to 2014. Johnson was awarded the Army Achievement Medal and the NATO Medal for Service. On May 2014, during his deployment, he was accused of sexual harassment by a female soldier. Inspection of soldiers' rooms found one pair of undergarments in Johnson's quarters, while a soldier discovered the remaining 3 in Johnson's pocket. When confronted about it, Johnson ran away with the undergarments and attempted to dispose of them in a nearby dumpster. Branford J. Glendening, who represented Johnson in the case, said, "I got the impression that he had a bad attitude, but nothing beyond that. I remember him being slightly disrespectful of me. He never referred to me as sir or by my rank. He never made any remarks that were threatening to me or that he wanted to seek retaliation with the Army." He was supposed to be removed from the Army with an other than honorable discharge, meaning he might not be entitled to veterans' benefits and will not be eligible to re-enlist in the Army. But Johnson fought for a honorable discharge, and when he got out of the military, he did receive a honorable discharge. The military was not Micah thought it would be. His mother, Delphine Johnson, said he was very disappointed. Very disappointed. But it may be that the ideal he thought of our government, but what he thought the military represented, just didn't live up to his expectations. After coming home to the States, Johnson lived with his mother, becoming a loner, and would almost never openly speak out about his hatred. The Veterans Health Administration in August 2016 showing that Johnson had symptoms for post-traumatic stress disorder following his return from Afghanistan, but doctors concluded that he presented no serious risk to himself or others. Johnson had sought treatment for anxiety, depression, and hallucinations, once telling doctors that he had experienced nightmares after witnessing fellow soldiers dying in explosions. Johnson told doctors he was experiencing panic attacks a few times a week, including once while at Walmart, a conflict that required a police response. According to a former classmate, he would tell stories about being in the military, but he didn't seem depressed or anything. Johnson told his doctor, "I feel like I can't trust all of these strangers around me. I tried to block those out, but it is kinda hard to forget," Johnson said according to documents. A friend said that Johnson would repeatedly watch videos of the 1991 beating of Rodney King by police officers. His online activities indicates his interest in black nationalist groups and black nationalist organizations such as the new Black Panther Party, Nation of Islam, and Black Riders Liberation Army, groups which are listed as hate groups. Johnson tried to enter multiple Black Power groups but was rejected for being unstable after they did his background checks, according to Ken Moore of the collective Black Power movement, and Malik Shabazz, former chair of the new Black Panther Party. But even after being rejected multiple times, Johnson's belief remains firm and continued participating in protests. Moore said he was basically seen as a loner, a sympathizer. A gag order is in effect in these groups, neither confirming or denying having associated with Johnson prior to the incident. Encouraged by the people around him, and in the recent police shootings, Johnson made plans to attack what he considers the enemy and oppressors, gathering bomb-making materials, ammunition, bulletproof vests, and some journal writings that suggest Johnson had been contemplating violence against police for some time. All it needed is a spark, an opportunity to create as much damage as possible. And he did not need to wait that long to find it.
Don't move, bro. Stop. What I did? I'm saying what I did. So don't move on. Shoot your. Put your hands on the car. Put your hands on the car. I'm gonna shoot you in your head. You understand me? Don't you move. I'm gonna shoot you in your head. You hear me? Don't you move. All right, hold up, man. You hurt my arm. Stop. I'm saying what happened, man. Hold on, my hands is on the car. Tase his ass. You on the ground. Get on the ground! Pop him again, Howie! Hey, bro, get on the ground! What are you doing? Fucking gotta go! Hey, bro! You move, I swear to God! Big boss! Get on the ground!
Well, sir. Good. How are you? Good. Reason I put you over, your brake lights are out. So you only have one active brake light, and that's going to be your passenger side one. Your third brake light, which is up here on top, and then this one back here, is going to be out. You have your license and insurance?
I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it then. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out! Go move!
Protesters will march and rally in response to not one but two police shootings involving black men.
In the aftermath of the Minnesota police-involved shooting and then the Baton Rouge police-involved shootings, there was a movement to have a national protest throughout every large city in the country. And Dallas had a local group that planned their protests in concert with these other protests that were happening all across the country on July 7th.
7 p.m. Main Street. The night started with a protest. An estimated 800 demonstrators marched. The protest begins at the Bella Garden Park of Main Street in downtown Dallas. Nearly 100 police officers flanked the demonstrators while they continued down the road. The march remained peaceful.
We were pretty comfortable that morning that this would be a seamless event. People would express themselves, but we would be kind of navigating, guiding them in a peaceful way. It began as scheduled, on time. There were scheduled speakers that expressed themselves, no different than what you hear in other protests across the country about police officers shooting unarmed black men. But this was specifically focused on the shootings in Minnesota and Baton Rouge that had happened just the days before. And this was connected to protests in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. All the big cities were experiencing similar protests, similar speeches. And so it was going to plan. and people were actually interacting well with our cops. They were taking selfies, smiles. Even later into the protest, I felt very comfortable with that it was going to be a peaceful event.
There was no indication of anything going any different than any other protest that I've been involved in my 31-year career.
He said, okay, well, I'm going to get ready to go to work. And I said, okay, I always told him I'm praying for you. Be safe. And he said, Ma. He called me Ma. He said, I love you. And I said, I love you more. Be safe.
Actually, the 7th was his first day back at work. He went to give Caroline, my youngest, a hug and a kiss, and she was just being silly and saying, no kisses. And it was really out of the ordinary for him, but he said, hey, Caroline, you never know if this could be the last time you hug and kiss me goodbye. And she jumped up and gave him.
And the thing I hear every morning and every night is 3 words: love you, Dad. That's the last 3 words that he said to me. Love you, Dad.
The then president of Dallas Police Association, Mike Mata, stated that someone within the Dallas Police Department chain of command ordered the officers assigned to the protest to not wear military-style bulletproof vests because they did not want the officers to look too militaristic or aggressive, and had to keep them in their patrol vehicles. Instead, to wear standard-issue Kevlar vests, which were not able to protect against rifle rounds. There is also no SWAT in the march for the same reason, meaning there will be no snipers on the rooftops and no armored cars. Stephen Upham, an El Centro College professor, arrived on the 2nd floor of the B building of El Centro campus. 8 p.m., El Centro College that was nearby, the protest was placed on lockdown as precaution. It is not specified what time, but according to the investigators, Johnson essentially shadowed the march, driving from street to street, finding the opportunity to attack. 8:45 p.m., Dallas police posted their last video of the protesters.
We were at that intersection, I believe it was Main Street and Lamar, which is close to El Centro and the Bank of America building. We were doing traffic. I had a rookie that just started like the week before, which is Officer Borchardt. That was my rookie. So we parked in the south side of the intersection, and then Sergeant Gunter, Officer Barrientos, Officer Crow, and Lawrence were in the on the west side of the intersection facing us. And Samaripa was on the south side, kind of on the other side behind me.
The protest is almost over when Micah Johnson parked his black SUV on Lamar Street in front of El Centro College. With his hazard lights flashing, Johnson stepped out and, wearing a body armor vest, was armed with a semi-automatic assault rifle along with a handgun. Johnson then moved south on Lamar Street towards Main Street, where officers had gathered to block traffic for the protesters. There were reports that Johnson first fired in the air to lure in the officers.
I had just told the second in command, sounds like it's about to be over, peaceful. I'm gonna go home, call me when the last protester gets in the car and drives off. So we want to stay to the end to make sure no fights or anything broke out as people walk to their cars. And so I had only taken off my gun belt. I was still in uniform, and I get this call from my second in command, and he's frantic, out of breath. Obviously something had just the pace of his conversation, and then what he said to me made my heart drop. It really did.
We were done. We were waiting for the all clear sign, and that's when you start hearing noise.
We heard what sounded like either a firecracker, but it sounded kind of far away. I looked over at the guys, and they were all like, that sounded weird. Where did that come from? It sounded kind of far away. We continued what we were doing, but we were looking around, and then some time went by, and then all of a sudden we heard a loud gunshot. This one we knew was a gunshot.
It started getting louder and louder, and we still couldn't get a beat on it. And that's when you realize all hell's about to break loose.
You know it's bad when motherfuckers start asking you where I get some guns at.
You don't know it while you're in it. The sinking feeling comes.
This is a systematic issue with our criminal justice system, with our educational system, and it is a major failure for so many African Americans and people who are poor as well.
We're trying to watch what's happening. Just FYI, we're trying to watch what's happening in Dallas, Texas. We've seen protests in many locations. Did we lose the feed there? We're keeping our eyes on it for you.
Is that a cop dead?
That's a cop down.
Dude, that's a cop down. Dude, that's a cop down.
Yeah. There's 4 cops down.
4?
Yeah, he shot 7 times.
It's a dude?
No, it's a sniper from up here somewhere.
It's a sniper?
You hear the shot?
Get down.
Get down. Get down. That's what
There's a fucking sniper out here. There's a fucking sniper. He shot 4 cops.
At 8:57 p.m. Many of the demonstrators were headed back to their vehicles when the eruption of gunshots rang out. The sound reverberated off the buildings, causing confusion as to where the shots were coming from. Shetamia Taylor, one of the protesters, was just in the intersection when the shooting started. One of the officers told her to back off to safety. Walking, holding her 15-year-old son, trying to get away, she was shot. Taylor was shot in the back of her leg, breaking a tibia.
I get maybe here, about that far, because I'm not running, and I felt it through the back of my leg, and I heard, I'm like, I got shot.
It was a pause, and there was a second shot, and the police officer, I saw him, kind of tall, hefty, white guy, bald. I remember seeing him, and that second shot, he kind of, as he was going down, he said he has a gun, run.
I see the officer who had just told me seconds before. See him going down.
It was Senior Corporal Lorne Arons, moments before a bullet tore into his ribber. The officers started guiding the demonstrators away from the gunfire amid the panic.
So I look over there, and that's when I saw Crow going down. And Aaron. That's when I noticed something was wrong. I remember I screamed to my rookie to get cover, and I just took off running towards them. Samaripa was doing the same thing. Samaripa's running with me. Then he got hit, and he goes down. And I can see the round hitting the pavement, and I'm already behind the squad car, behind the engine. I got my gun out, and I felt the bullet just hit between my legs, and the shrapnel hit me.
Assist on Officer, shots fired. Code 3, stay off the radio. Officer down.
I was saying I agree with everything he just said. Eric just said. I do think it's systematic, et cetera, et cetera. And
Texas. This is disturbing. I'm not sure what we're seeing, but it looks from this vantage point like an officer down.
Got to my radio and announced on the radio, shots fired, shots fired. We're in the kill zone.
Point I realized I got hit by shrapnel in my arm. And I remember just kind of looking down and seeing all the blood all over my uniform and I could just see it. It was gushing pretty good. And I remembered shot isn't dead, and this doesn't hurt as bad as childbirth, so we're going to be okay. And then I started to feel my boot filling up, so I did a quick check, and I saw that it was hitting my leg too.
After a while, I realized that, you know, hey, this guy isn't that far away. I could feel the bullets flying over my head. I could hear the snap of the you know, the sonic boom that the bullet makes. And I could feel the glass shattering from the car that was in front of me. My car, the car that was between me and the shooter, I could feel pieces of, you know, metal and glass flying past me. It was around that time where I got shot in the hand and caught fragments in the chest. It looked pretty nasty. I don't know how to explain it. It looked like it was just dangling. It looked like, you know, like it was gonna fall off.
Senior Corporal Lorne Arens, Officer Michael Kroll, and Officer Patricio Patrick Samaripa were hit and the first to be killed in the initial gunfire. 3 other Dallas police officers, Jorge Barrientos, Officer Gretchen Rocha, that was just weeks out of her academy, and Senior Corporal Ivan Saldana, are injured. Along with the civilian, Shetamia Taylor. Injured, Taylor threw herself on top of her 15-year-old son to shield him from bullets, pushing him in between 2 cars and the curb. She lay on top of her son for several minutes until Greg Weatherford, a plainclothes police officer, saw Taylor was injured and came to her aid. Her son was covered in his mother's blood.
He ended up in between the car and the curb. I heard him when he said, "Is anybody hit?" And I was saying yes. And the officer said it again kind of loud, and I said, "Yes, sir, I'm hitting my leg." And the other officer jumped on top of me and covered me and my son. And there was another one at our feet, and there was another one over our head.
I go down on top of her, and because the bullets are still flying, you can hear the bullets hitting the concrete. You can see the spark and hear the bullets popping by your head.
Fire over there.
Oh my God.
Get right here. That is hitting over here. You okay?
I'm all right. Wow.
What?
A student called Upham over to a window overlooking the street. Upham saw officers crouching behind a box truck, guns drawn. An officer motioned for Upham to get away from the windows.
He looks up and sees us and goes like this to us. Get back. That's when I know we're in danger. I knew that we need to lock down.
He and the students went back to their classroom, locked the door, and hid.
But this time, bullets are hitting the car. I got in the Z, pulled him over to me the best I could, and was talking to him. Barrientos came over to assist.
You know, I didn't even think about it. I just ran over towards him and Sergeant Gunther.
I was too far away from my car to get my med kit. I asked Barrientos, did he have anything? Could he get my kit? But then we looked, and by this time, the car has been riddled with bullets. There's no way we can get to it.
I ran in the intersection where I started providing aid to Corporal Ahrens. I remember organizing an extraction because I realized our ambulances wouldn't enter the intersection. So I remember telling one of the sergeants empty the squad cars so we could put the officers in the squad cars and take them to the hospital.
So I saw Kroll and I saw a group of officers. They were starting to load him. I was like, well, I can help with that. I know I can help with that.
Nobody's coming. There's no ambulance that's coming in here until this scene's secure. Unload these cars. We'll put the wounded in the cars we can self-transport to Baylor Hospital.
Officers physically carried their shot colleague as they loaded them in the backup squad cars and rushed them off to the hospital. Even Rock, the Dallas police officer, Brett Rocha, who was struck in the arm and leg with a shrapnel, instead drove Aaron's wounded partner, Kroll, to Parkland Memorial Hospital. Meanwhile, Johnson headed north on Lamar Street, firing towards death officers coming from the West End station to the scene. That officer, Misty McBride, was shot while running to take cover behind a car. She was shot in the arm and it broke her shoulder.
When I was running, I felt a pop in the back of my arm. Where the bicep, tricep, deltoid, everything meets, that's where the bullet went through. I was like, nope, this is not my time, I'm not going. And I turned around and threw myself on the ground and started crawling.
McBride rode towards the statue in the Rosa Park Plaza to take cover, and back towards her car. That officer Lee Cannon and Dallas Police Sergeant Giovanni Wells were also hit. Sergeant Giovanni Wells was wounded in the abdomen and will be the only black officer injured in the attack.
With what department they're with were shot in the process of this gunfire with an unknown shooter or shooters.
Yeah, Alex, we have
Steve.
Sky 4 up, and the focus is clearly on the parking garage.
Of course, is not a help to police officers who are trying to do their job. We are walking backwards now as officers are asking us to move back.
Johnson approached El Centro campus entrance and saw two El Centro officers, Officer John Abbott and Corporal Brian Shaw, were inside when Johnson opened fire at them, injuring them both.
We managed to get towards the Lamar Street entrance, which is where the gunman shot and basically lit us up when we were trying to get out the door. I think he was trying to get into the building with us to take cover when we came up on him. He fired into the glass.
Corporal Brian Shaw was shot in the stomach underneath his bulletproof vest.
Where is he? Where?
While Officer John Abbott was hit by flying glass in the legs.
Anybody hit? Get down! Get down! Get back!
Johnson then headed down Lamar Street, hiding behind concrete pillars. He saw that Officer Brent Thompson and engaged him in a gunfight.
Brent just so happened that he actually saw the shooter. Our other officers didn't see the shooter immediately, but as soon as they saw Brent's car and saw Brent was not in the car, that's when they then picked up where Brent was located, and he was actually engaging the shooter.
Video from a nearby rooftop shows Johnson firing to the left of the pillar before sneaking up on Officer Brent Thompson. Then standing over him, Johnson shoots the officer again.
Oh shit, there's more of them.
Johnson then turned around the corner and went down Elm Street, where he shot out another glass door of El Centro campus, and this time was able to enter El Centro.
19, we have an officer down at Elm and Lamar. Officer down, get me EMS now.
Johnson went up the stairs to the second floor. By this point, he was bleeding from the injuries he sustained in the firefight with the officers, marking his route. Officer Abbott left El Centro to help Officer Thompson.
When I did finally make it outside, and that was after DPD was able to, Dallas really pushed him back, I went out with him and saw Thompson on the ground.
I started following the trail of officers and glass where the shooter went into the building.
Hearing the shattering glass, one of the injured campus officers, Corporal Shaw, made his way through the building and saw a trail of blood leading to a stairwell. Accompanied by another police officer, Officer Shaw entered the stairwell and was met with gunfire coming from above. Unable to see Johnson, he held his fire and retreated with the other officer. Johnson then entered the library on the second floor. When the first contact was made, SWAT officers from nearby districts reached downtown from all directions. The first to arrive were Danny Cañete, Ryan Scott, and Brandon Berry. Ryan Scott saw an officer pointing toward El Centro College, as if trying to tell him the gunman had gone inside. On instinct, Scott took off running.
Slow down! He's in the damn building right there! I don't know where he's at! He's in that building right here! He got from that building!
Other officers began entering the college, sealing escape routes from the building, and evacuating students and teachers in the building.
What they were apparently doing was going room to room,
Police, come on, your hands up!
rounding up some students and then bringing them out section by section.
We also had a lot of people who had been injured as they were running. I believe there was actually one broken leg, some sprains and strains.
I don't know.
Can you see in there? I got looks like blood.
Let's go.
Rifles, possibly in the El Centro College building.
I got you, brother. I got you.
I knew then that this was a seminal event happening in our city that was different.
Hey, we don't know what stairwell he's up. He could be down, he could be up. Got it?
Cañete approached Officer Shaw of El Centro College, pointing a gun at the stairwell. "What do you have?" Cañete asked. "He's in there," Officer Shaw said to him. Berry peered to the rectangular window on the stairwell door and saw blood on the concrete.
LT, we're gonna follow the blood. You got no choice.
Cañete pressed forward. Other officers followed him. They followed the trail of blood up the stairs at a small landing.
Is that door with you guys?
I just remember climbing the stairwell, and I didn't know whether this was going to be, he could have popped up from any cranny, nook, corner, jumped out, and started firing at us.
We got a loading hammer right here, too, so.
College building.
Suspect is inside the El Centro building. Inside the El Centro building.
We run in the building, me, my partner, and the other guy from our unit. And it was such chaos. Had people hiding behind things and yelling, "No, he went that way. No, he's over there. No, he's over on that side."
And we were, at that point, trying to lock down the building. We knew we had at least one subject in our building, or in the 3 buildings that were there, that we were trying to contain in that area. We had been able to start taking the control back. The surprise was over. We now had the initiative. And that was, let's get this guy contained into an area where we can deal with him whatever way we need to.
"Here's the deal," Cañete told the other officers. "The only way we're going to catch this guy is if we can sneak up on him." Officers then took a different route than what Johnson had taken. They spotted 2 girls, crying and terrified. The officers lowered their guns to help them. Meanwhile, Johnson was just past the library, and there, from a window looking down on Elm Street, where police officers are positioned. Seeing this, Johnson once again opened fire. Dallas Police Sergeant Michael Smith was by the 7-Eleven on Elm Street, was shot in the back and killed. Yard officer Jesus Ratena was also shot in the arm and his radio. Asking the girls they encountered, Cañete whispered, "Where is he?" At that moment, he heard repeated firing of a semi-automatic rifle. It was close to them. Now he's shooting kids. The SWAT officers at that time thought he was shooting students. Unbeknownst to Upham and the students, Johnson had already came up the stairs to the second floor. They could hear gunfire. Upham also did not realize that the shooter had chosen to make his last stand against the police just down the hall, around the corner. 9:15 p.m. The officer advanced down the long hallway. The hallway winded. It had 3 exits, 2 hallways, and a stairwell. Officer Danny Cañete is the first to see him in the hallway. From where Cañete stood, he caught a slight movement in the shadow. Cañete watched as the figure leapt across the hallway into a small alcove, with only 2 doors leading to where he was positioned. It was only a 30-feet hallway that separated SWAT officers from Johnson. Cañete peered to the sights of his rifle. Then he heard the gunman. Bullets ripped through the walls and ricocheted off metal door frames. Bullets passed Cañete's face and Cañete retreated. Replacing Cañete, Scott peeked out the corner and could see Johnson and repeatedly shot, unloading 26 rounds down the hallway. Johnson firing back all the while.
Stay, right there.
Come out with your hands up! Drop your weapon and come out!
Somehow, nobody from the SWAT members had been hit. They had the shooter pinned down, but they need more protection if they want to get close. Sergeant Larry Gordon, a SWAT negotiator at the time, for the next several hours, would try to negotiate with Johnson. As the officers began asking Johnson questions, he said he would only speak to black officers. When the negotiator, Sergeant Gordon, told Johnson that he was black, Johnson initially responded, "No way." Johnson told Sergeant Gordon that he served overseas in the military. He repeatedly referred to himself as X when asked for his name.
What you need? Huh? X? Hey, X, how you doing? X, I need you to put that gun down and come out of here. Well, I know you're prepared for this. Obviously, this isn't going to end well.
DART has just tweeted something.
Right.
Sean, you have that tweet?
DART is confirming for us now 4 of their officers have been shot and wounded. 1 DART officer now confirmed dead.
Deputy Officer Matt Baines decided to load his rifle, but didn't fully grasp how close he was to the shooter.
I told you, X, I got control over here. I'm trying to make you understand. I got control. X, I'm not bullshitting you, man. I hadn't bullshitted you in 45 minutes.
Officer Baines saw the gunman stick his barrel around the corner, a sliver of his head peeking out, and started firing, with inconclusive results. The officers debated what to do. They considered using flashbang, but Johnson has shown that he is not the average criminal and might be able to deal with it, so they decided against the flashbang. 10:29 p.m. There were reported 10 officers shot. 3 of those officers have died. Johnson said that he acted alone and was not part of any group. He repeatedly taunted police, claiming to have placed bombs throughout the city. There was a concern that the bullets fall on the second floor, where easily penetrating the drywall, making it dangerous for the officers and any unevacuated students who might have remained in the building.
I got fragments coming through.
Now, the only thing that protected us is we had a wall to our immediate right.
Yep, we're taking rounds to the wall.
But it's nothing but sheetrock, and as you know, an assault rifle, those rounds are going to penetrate that sheetrock like a knife through melted butter.
We're located in Rockville College, and shooting going on.
Hot fire.
Are they shooting inside of El Negro?
Yes.
Upham made multiple calls. This is one of them.
Do not hang up on me. This is the third hanger that's hung up on me. I'm telling you, we're locked in a room at the Borchardt College downtown Dallas on the second floor. We're in B as the door 268. We've heard multiple shots, probably in the neighborhood of 100 to 150 shots.
Okay, sir, I'm showing that we do have this call in for police.
Okay, can you stick on the line with us?
So as soon as they can get to you, they will be there.
So you just want us to hang up?
I'm sorry?
You just want me to hang up?
Yes, sir. I mean, I can't. I mean, I'm not sure if I can do. They do know that you're there. They're trying to get to you as fast as they can.
Maybe due to the chaos, but the message never reached the tactical team on the second floor. They had no idea that Upham and his students were trapped there.
I hear voices, but I don't know if it's cops. Because if it was, what our situation was.
10:45 p.m. Authorities raised the number of officers shot to 11. Chief Brown erroneously told reporters that at least 2 snipers from elevated positions triangulated to shoot police officers ambush style. He indicated that one was holed up in a parking garage. Two miles from the gunfire, injured police officers began streaming into Baylor University Medical Center, one of which is described as he came so fast that he blew out a star and was running on a rim.
But everybody's still driving lackadaisical. Everybody's still very calm. Nobody really seems to be calling on the phone or frantic. And even when we get to the hospital, nobody really knew what was going on just yet. Because when we get to the emergency room, everybody's just stunned that this car just came in and jumped every single curb to get to the ER door.
I remember the police telling us, you're in the hot zone, you're in the hot zone. And we're like, yeah, well, where's the cop? Where's the policeman at?
First thing that I saw as I was walking down the hallway was they had just walked Heidi out from seeing Mike. And they were basically, there was officers on either side of her holding her up.
I don't even know really how to describe it because, you know, at 8:40 I talked to him. At 11 o'clock he was laying there dead in front of me.
He was getting people out of the area. It was never, ever about anything he did wrong. He knew that area. We had worked it for 5 years. He did everything right, and a coward shot him in the back.
In the hallway, the officers rotated shifts every 5 minutes to stay alert and rest their arms. 11:52 p.m. The Dallas Police Department tweeted an image of a man identified as Mark Yu wearing a camouflage-style shirt and carrying a rifle. The tweet indicated that the man was one of the suspects. Please help us find him. The tweet read,
Questions. Talk about the pictures you guys want put out. Who are these people you're looking for in the pictures? They handed a bunch of these out.
Right. We wanted to show a person of interest who witnesses at the scene say were involved in this shooting in some way. So this is a person of interest. As you can see, they're in camouflage, and they have a rifle strap slung with a rifle butt sticking up. And we know that rifles were used. And so if anyone knows or recognizes this picture, please immediately call 911.
Mark Yu, fearing that he might be mistaken for the gunman, gave his rifle to the police while on Commerce Street.
Bro, give it to him, bro. Bro, give it to him, bro. Give it to him, bro. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, fuck yeah. Hang on that up.
His weapon confiscated, and he was given a card by the officer for him to take it back at a later date. The video shows him turning the gun he was carrying over to police moments after the shooting occurred. The Dallas Police Department later tweet of Mark Hughes turning himself in. He is only one of the many false suspects detained that day.
You have several people in the crowd who have become kind of angered by the officers' actions. They claim that the guy was just standing in the crowd. He wasn't doing anything.
You said we're killing your black brothers, right? You know I'm black? All I'm asking is that we resolve this situation, man. I want to hear your story. The talking is over. It's time for revolution, brother. If you are my brother, turn the weapon on those sides.
12 a.m. According to Chief Brown, Johnson appeared delusional during the standoff. He had negotiated with him for about 2 hours. And he basically just lied to us, playing games, laughing at us, singing, asking how many did he get, and that he wanted to kill some more. However, Sergeant Gordon indicated in an interview that the shooter wasn't delusional.
I just want to know what you're feeling, X.
Basically, I just wanted to slow everything down because he's very emotional.
All these people are talking in my ear, X, want to know why you're doing this.
But Micah wasn't delusional.
African liberation.
He was very lucid, seemed to be very sane, and very in control.
Before 1 a.m., after several hours of negotiations, police determined that Johnson could not be persuaded to surrender.
Waiting him out was not an option because we were in danger, because we were in danger of him charging us and shooting us. Exactly what he did to Brent Thompson.
However we managed it would be critical not only for our city, for our officers and their families and the wounded, but also it would become a national conversation. I knew that instinctively right away, that whatever we did had to be done in the right way.
Brainstorming on what to do, they proposed that they throw a phone down the hallway and say it would help him talk to the negotiator. And when the gunman reached out to grab it, they would shoot him in the head. Gordon tried to get Johnson to accept the phone, but he declined. I know what they're trying to do. They briefly considered charging down the hall behind ballistic shields, firing into his hiding spot. They'd probably get him, but it's too dangerous and he might kill some of them too. Senior Corporal Beans said they considered using a .50 caliber rifle to fire at the shooter. Johnson was holed up inside a populated college with tin sheet rock walls, so the tactical team deemed that approach too dangerous, as it could hit an unevacuated student. They also considered rappelling down the building or attacking Johnson through the ceiling after opening it with explosives. But both options were ruled out due to the risk they might pose to the officer who would carry it out, and it would take a large amount of explosive to collapse the concrete and seal up the building. Senior Corporal Jeremy Borchardt and others ultimately arrived at the idea to use the Remotec Andros Mark V8A1 bomb disposal remote control vehicle armed with about 1 pound of C4 explosive. Met with skepticism by the other officers, Jeremy Borchardt says, "We're authorized to use deadly force. That doesn't mean we have to shoot the guy." The plan was to move the robot to a point against the wall facing Johnson and then detonate the explosive. Officers started preparing for the plan without permission from the chief. For the foundation of the bomb, they used a book. The plan was to fasten the bomb to one side of the book and on the other side into the robot's claw. Senior Corporal Borchardt met with Officer Jude Brown. Brown gave Borchardt a 1.25 pound brick of C4. Officer Gordon decided they should start with a smaller device and throw what is called a robot. A cylinder with wheels had a small camera that transmitted a live picture of the hallway back to a handheld monitor. SWAT still needed Chief Brown's approval for the bomb plan, but the chief were worried because no agency had done this before.
The only opportunity we had was the last option Bill Humphrey gave me, which had never been recommended in American policing, never been done in American policing. Didn't think you would weaponize a bomb robot with a pound of C4, but that might work.
Now you know what they're doing, right? They're cutting charges over there, so if you hear a big blast, that's probably good for you.
You know, after a while, it was the robot with the device was the only thing viable that we could come up with.
1 a.m. It was a stalemate. Gordon said he was tired of yelling down the hallway. The gunman said he was too. Gordon asked if he could send him a phone. They could deliver it to him with the robot. He wouldn't have to reach out into the hallway. It would be safe. The gunman thought about it, then agreed. He had gotten used to the little robot. Waiting for the robot, about 30 minutes passed, and Johnson was getting impatient. "Where's the phone, Larry?" he shouted. Gordon promised him it was on the way. But he, too, was irritated. The trust he established is slowly crumbling. Around this time, just before 1:28 a.m., now that the bomb was live and could go off, there were 2 ignition systems. If the first failed, they will have a backup. Officer Green told Officer Michaels that the robot's ignition system is unreliable in environments like this, with high levels of radio noise from fluorescent lighting and Wi-Fi signals. The wireless transmitter and receivers could not talk to each other. If that communication failed, the device would not detonate. Officer Green's solution is a less sensitive, serious ignition system. It's what Navy SEALs use, and Green had never seen it fail. Green helped Michaels wire in the backup, finishing attaching the bomb to the bomb robot. The officers stood back to look at the robot holding the bomb. Officer Michaels said, "It looks like a fucking bomb attached to a robot. They needed to cover it somehow." Officer Michaels placed a black trash bag over the bomb robot with holes for the camera. Finishing with building the bomb robot, the bomb squad officers drove their 800-pound Remotech Andros robot
Bringing this big old machine
through the college lobby, up the stairs, and onto the second floor. All officers except Gordon is left to talk to Johnson. The robot rolled forward, about 3 miles an hour, approaching Gordon down the hallway. Gordon reached down and grabbed a ballistic shield. He tucked it beside his body, covering himself as best as he could, ready to run. He called out an open-ended question to Johnson, just to keep the gunman talking. He hoped Johnson would go off on another rant, without realizing he was gone. Gordon entered the stairwell, then pushed the door shut, just as it closed. They heard Johnson called out, Larry, where'd you go? Larry." A half-dozen officers stayed on the second floor, in a classroom down the hall from the gunman. The ATF agent, Green, handed the black secondary detonator to Michaels, a senior breacher.
It's gonna blow some sheetrock, ceiling tiles. We're gonna be able to see for a bit.
The bomb robot entered the hallway Johnson is in.
Then as I got closer, he started to get lower down into a crouch with the rifle up. And then as I got even closer, he goes down and almost lays down in front of the thing. So what I saw and what I think was happening is he was anticipating an assault coming behind the robot.
As Borchardt drove closer, the screen flickered. They're losing the signal of the bomb robot. Borchardt reset the control, turned the key again, and put his finger on the button. Still no response. He started to reset the control a third time. Officer Michaels didn't wait.
I hit the button and nothing happened. Just quiet. I'm like, ah. So we were losing signal because of where it was. So luckily they passed the initiator to my secondary, and he grabbed it. And right as I pushed the third time, he pushed the button on the secondary, and boom.
At approximately 1:28 a.m., and when it was just feet from Johnson, the C4 detonated. Borchardt stared at the screen. The picture had frozen, and he could still see the gunman lying prone, staring at him. Then the screen flashed blue. Upham said the suspended ceiling inside his classroom popped up from the blast concussion.
We felt the bomb in our bones. It is very loud.
That bomb went off, it shook everything, blew out windows, set off every type of alarm that El Centro has.
The device explosion caused massive damage to the corridor, making it hard to see. Searching for the gunman, Senior Corporal Chris Webb heard a muffled sound scanning a pile of debris and spotted a tan military vest. The gunman lay curled on his left side, head down, his right arm in an angle, His fingers still touching the rifle. Suspect is down. Senior Corporal Matt Smith said over the radio. 3:06 a.m. The suspect is confirmed dead after the standoff with the police. This marked the first and only time police used a robot to kill someone. Later searches of downtown Dallas found no evidence of explosive that Johnson claims he planted. Just before 4 a.m., Nick Shater, Larry Gordon, and other SWAT members sat in the El Centro lobby, watching Mayor Mike Rawlings and Police Chief David Brown giving news briefings about the incident they were just in.
Right. So, again, the initial release was we had 10 officers shot. One of those officers is a DART officer, and they're deceased. Another DART officer was injured, but not deceased. There's 2 Dallas officers deceased. And as I mentioned, to update you, from that initial 10, we've had an additional officer to bring the total to 11. Any other questions?
And we also have a...
Yes, the suspect died. Yes, this is a horrible event. But the reality is, a family has lost a son, a brother, a father. I lost invaluable friends that I can't replace.
Aaron's didn't make it. Again, I was, just heartbroken. Both Zamaripa and Aaron's, I knew they had little kids. Zamaripa, I had been in the car with him when he would talk to his daughter on the phone.
I knew my 3 partners were gone. And then I knew my rookie was injured. Oh my God. And then Barriento was injured. Basically, my whole squad was injured.
Investigators discovered messages written by Johnson using his own blood while making his way up a stairwell. But the investigation by the police did not conclusively determine if the letters RB that Johnson had scrawled with his blood had any special meaning. Shetamia Taylor almost lost one of her leg, but managed to fully recover. Markey, that was suspected to have connections with the shooter, was later cleared by the police. But a tweet made by the Dallas police caused some people to be misinformed and sent death threats to you.
We received numerous of death threats. Property has not been returned to me. It's not me. I absolutely had nothing to do with that. Thank you, and God bless.
In total, 14 officers and 2 civilians were shot. The dead comprised of 4 Dallas Police Department officers and 1 Dallas Area Rapid Transit officer.
It's rough. In a matter of 7 minutes, I lost half of my crew. I can't replace that. I can't replace their laughter. I can't replace his wit. I can't replace his intellect, his guile, his ability to analyze the situation. He was a former investigator, so those investigative skills coupled with his street skills were invaluable. You just can't find that every day.
It was a straight ambush. He just ambushed us. And he targeted them because they were the biggest white guys in our group.
Now, the embarrassing thing to me is that the good Lord manages to give me good people. I mean, amazing people to work with, from on top of my chain to now. So, sorry.
I'm so sorry, Edmund. We're all with you.
Yeah. It's all right.
The then president of the Dallas Police Association, Mike Mata, stated, "A lot of those shots and a lot of those wounds were chest shots, lower abdomen wound shots, and those heavy vests would have covered them."
Actually, I did get a message from someone he had arrested at some point, and the person said that, "I remember this officer, and even though he arrested me, he was kind and he treated me with respect."
There's a reason why we
we handle things the way we do, we might come off like being mean. We're not being mean, we're being safe. We're trying to stay alive. Try to put yourselves in our shoes, where someone hates you just because of the clothes you're wearing.
I showed up to work the next day, and the days following, so that people will know when someone knocks you down, you stand your ass back up. They're not going to defeat us. They're not going to defeat me. So I stand up every day. You are missed. You are loved. You will never be forgotten.
Goodbye, Daddy. We love you. Be safe.